on the fiscal front, and right to point out that this is aid, not stimulus. It's aid. Richard Bernstein of RB Advisors not optimistic about the outcome of these talks. He goes on to write the following: investors should expect a low bar for negotiations as politics on both sides of the aisle are overwhelming public need. It is unlikely local government employment will rebound without federal assistance, and it is also unlikely that the private sector can pick up the slack. Richard joins us now for more. So, Richard, let's talk about that. The outlook that people have become so much more constructive over. Do you share that?
Well, Jonathan, good morning. I do. I think you've got this kind of weird tug of war going on between the virus and the reality of a national emergency, which I don't understand why people won't call it a national emergency. That's really what it is. And on the other side, you've got this massive monetary stimulus. And so, to date, the monetary stimulus has been winning. It's been beating the virus. But for the stock market, that's kind of what's going on. The point in the quote that you just mentioned was to point out the lack of aid, using your word, the lack of aid is starting to pull back now on that tug of war. And I think we have to be very careful as we look forward. We have to deal with the national emergency, and if people aren't going to deal with it, it's going to start winning.
Well, I think, Richard, we've been conditioned, though, to believe through experience that dips are there to be bought. And I think so many people hold that view right now, Richard, that there are no dips anymore in the way that there might have been. We also know that when governments start to correct course, when state and local officials start to correct course with restrictions, the peak's not too far behind. And once again, that's usually an opportunity for risk appetite and risk assets to take another leg higher. So, Richard, I'd ask, why would this be any different?
Well, I think, Jonathan, number one, we do have this huge monetary stimulus. You got to remember, money growth in the United States is running 23, 24, 25%. That is off the charts. We've never seen anything like that, certainly in my professional career, nothing even close. This is about, 2/3 faster than the money growth of the 1970s. So this is off the charts from that side. On the other side, you've also got earnings and very easy earning comparison. As you go through 2021, earnings comparisons versus 2020, because of the pandemic, are going to be very, very easy. And earnings are going to boom for a lot of companies. Not necessarily the big safe haven companies, but secondary and tertiary cyclical companies are going to see very big changes in their earnings growth, which hopefully will aid employment and investment.
Richard, let's get to some of the calls. Add to cyclicals, to US small, to Europe small caps, to energy, to materials, to industrials. You and I have had a pretty nuanced conversation about the outlook, but some of the calls I'm seeing from RB, Richard, they're in there with the consensus. And I'm not here to say groupthink is wrong, per se. I'm just saying that is what the group thinks at the moment. So, Richard, where do you get that differentiation? Where does it come from in the next 12 months?
Well, I think, Jonathan, there's a couple of things. Number one, my colleague Dan Suzuki, who you know well, often points out that you have to differentiate between what people are saying and what people are doing. And I'm not quite sure we're seeing, especially among institutional investors and private clients, I don't think we're seeing this rush to value, a rush to cyclicals and things like that. A lot of people the rush is still to venture capital, to private equity, to technology, to innovators and disruptors and things like that. I think one could argue how far out of consensus we are, and I would admit that, but I think we're still a little bit of the salmon swimming upstream here.